the President's Council on Financial Capability.
We commissioned a national survey last month and found that American parents are clamoring for their children to learn about money management in school. The survey found that 85% of parents want a course in personal finance to be a high school graduation requirement. But we all know that in most classrooms across the globe, personal finance is neither taught nor a condition of high school graduation. In the U.S., only 4 states have a requirement. This raises some important questions. First, should government make financial literacy mandatory in schools? Second, with governments worldwide creating new consumer protection laws, what role should financial literacy play in helping those consumers understand these protections? And finally, third, should regulation and education be designed to complement each other? These are some of the questions our panels will tackle today. And I can't think of a better person to moderate our first panel. Maria Bartiromo is renowned for her ability as a reporter to get straight answers out of powerful people. As the anchor of CNBC's Wall Street Journal Report with Maria Bartiromo and anchor of CNBC's Closing Bell, she has helped make the world's financial system more open and more transparent. She has broken down countless barriers since being the first journalist to report live from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange on a daily basis in 1995. Bartiromo has received many prestigious awards, including an Emmy and a Gracie. And she will be inducted this year into the Cable Hall of Fame for her impact on the cable industry. Closer to home, Maria is no stranger to the topic of financial literacy. This has been her passion for over a decade. Please join me in welcoming Maria Bartiromo.
Together today because we all have a passion and a belief that this is important and needs to be taught to our children at a young age. The fact is Byron said it so well, I couldn't have said it any better, but nobody ever teaches you this stuff. And I'm talking about basic things, why you can't charge and charge and charge and borrow money forever, and why you have to have a nest egg in place and save for your dreams, and why we all need a retirement vehicle in place. All of these things, as we all know, are basic things that we all need to have and we all need to understand. And unfortunately, because nobody ever teaches you about this stuff as a child, you go through life, you become an adult, and then you're just too embarrassed to tell whomever, I have no idea what you're talking about. I know sometimes when I'm on the air, my girlfriends from high school will call me up and they say, nice haircut, great shoes, no idea what you're talking about. And I always say, look, you've got to get your arms around your financial life. So that's what we're going to do today. And in particular on this panel, we have really powerhouses that you will hear from in a moment, who will talk about the role of the private sector and the role of government. Because really, much of this stuff begins at home. I was lucky to have a mother who had the wisdom to always drill down on me. Even if it was, Mom, can I get an ice cream cone? She would say, sure, you could get an ice cream cone from the ice cream truck outside, but how will you pay for it? Do you have any change in the jar that you've been saving? And so little things, these things that just are drilled into your head at a young age mean so much later in life. They really do. So it can begin at home for sure. Sometimes it doesn't begin at home, and we need the participation of our schools, our teachers, and government as well. So we're going to get into that right now. Let me bring on the panel, and we are going to also look around the world. Ian Solomon is going to give us a great window into what's happening on emerging markets, what's happening in other places where, for example, in China, kids are going to school 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, versus 7 hours a day here in the U.S., 5 days a week. There's a real focus on education in China, and we want to find out what the rest of the world is doing, how we can learn and share cultures and education. So we kick it off with Ian H. Solomon. He is United States Executive Director at the World Bank. Ian.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you. It's really great to be here, and I applaud the public-private partnership that put this event together. I represent the United States on the World Bank Board of Directors. Building financial capability is a global issue and should be a global priority. Thinking of it that way has real benefits for American business and for the American economy. You see, the World Bank makes investments in low and middle-income countries to promote economic growth and fight poverty. It is an indispensable partner for the U.S., leveraging our constrained resources. The World Bank works closely with the United States development agencies to help countries build sustainable market-based systems that not only help lift their citizens out of poverty, but also create markets for American goods and services. Building sustainable markets and capturing the opportunities of global growth means strengthening the financial capability of the 95% of the world's consumers who live outside the United States. I believe financial capability is 5 dimensions. First and foremost, literacy, the ability to understand how to use financial products and manage your resources. Second, some level of savings, and even if small. Third, access to financial intermediation of one kind or another. Fourth, consumer protection. And finally, behavior. It's not just theoretical, we're talking about actual behavior. Literacy, savings, access, protection, and behavior. Before the financial crisis, the global economy was adding about 150 million new consumers of financial services each year. Most of these consumers are in developing countries where financial literacy and consumer protection are still undeveloped. Well, the financial crisis highlighted the importance of consumer protection and literacy for the stability of the financial sector. In Central and Eastern Europe, for example, the damage to the financial sector was serious. It is not clear how many borrowers understood the risks in taking long-term debt in foreign currencies and at variable interest rates. A World Bank survey of Russian households showed that skills in financial literacy helped households retain savings during the crisis. This has consequences for all of us. So what do we know? First, let me quickly suggest 3 lessons. First, middle and high-income countries would benefit from national strategies on financial education and financial literacy. I think there's a consensus in this room about that for sure. Second, financial education for consumers should be focused on teachable moments, where the education is immediately relevant to people's lives or coincides with key life events or financial decisions. Third, it may be more effective to teach simple rule-of-thumb concepts like a small business person should only pay themselves a fixed amount on a weekly basis as a rule of thumb, rather than standard fundamentals-based accounting training. Let me close by suggesting a simple equation. Global financial capability means stronger markets overseas. Stronger markets overseas means more U.S. exports. More U.S. exports mean more jobs here in the U.S. More jobs here is more prosperity. Thank you.
Ian, thank you very much for those very smart insights. We will hear from each panelist for just a few minutes before we get into a real interactive discussion about solutions and how we can take this to the next level. Charles L. Evans is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. And Charlie, thank you so much to the Fed for all that you have been doing for this issue.
Thanks, Maria. Good morning. On behalf of the Chicago Fed, I want to say that it's a pleasure to have you here at this event, which we've been doing now for 10 years. Given the economic difficulties we have recently faced, financial education and ultimately the ability to make good financial decisions have become increasingly important issues to each and every one of us. In the last 2 decades, we've seen tremendous technological advances and an exponential increase in financial products. This has, of course, increased our choices, but made the financial decision-making process all the more difficult. And I can't speak for anybody else, but I find it takes a bit of time to absorb the costs and benefits of each new financial product that I'm presented with. As the U.S. Central Bank, the Fed plays a role in helping to protect consumers. For example, we ensure that financial institutions provide essential information in prescribed formats so that consumers are better able to compare different products. We and the newly created Consumer Protection Bureau will continue to work to protect consumers in this and a variety of other ways. However, regulation can only take us so far. Consumers' ability to understand and act upon all the information available is, in the end, one of the best lines of defense for their own financial futures. In addition to our responsibilities in consumer protection, we have a number of strengths we bring to this conversation on financial education. We strive to be recognized as a neutral party that's well positioned to forge and leverage relationships across the private and public spectrum. We possess deep practical experience and actively reach out to communities and especially educators to discuss the importance of understanding how our economy works, and I think many of you in the room are in that case. And lastly, we offer economic expertise in research and evaluation. Let me briefly expand on the role of research. In regards to our role as research and evaluation experts, I want to take the opportunity to highlight a few research papers recently published by the Chicago Fed. A comprehensive literature review on the effectiveness of financial education finds that some financial education programs improve financial behavior, but not necessarily financial literacy, and vice versa. Think about case studies which are geared towards a specific decision and how much people learn from that particular study versus just general lecturing and learning in that way. And another paper recently published on household decision-making finds that math abilities mattered most in terms of financial decision-making, and non-math abilities mattered most for non-financial decision-making. I remember distinctly the first time I learned to write a check. It was 6th grade math class. Integrating financial skills as examples of math teaching are very important. These studies give interesting insights into decision-making and its relationship to education. I think it's clear from these and many other studies that financial education can work, but I also think many studies point to ways we can promote better financial behavior without having to rely strictly on traditional financial education. We currently have some work underway here at the bank looking at how our employees make retirement investment decisions, thinking about annuities decision-making. I'm intrigued by the research into decision-making and more generally the field of behavioral economics. I think we'll continue to see positive policy recommendations grow out of this research. So in conclusion, there's no doubt that our goal as a community is to empower people to make better financial decisions, but the path to get there is not clear or easily defined. I think both smart financial education and solid research can help us better prepare and protect consumers in the future. Thanks for your time, and I look forward to the panel discussion.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Rosie Rios is Treasurer of the United States, U.S. Department of Treasury. And Treasurer Rosie, let me just congratulate you for being such a great role model, not only for our children, but for women.
Thank you so much, Maria, and to you as well. Actually, I just want to thank you publicly because you were our keynote moderator for our Women in Finance Symposium last March in Treasury, and where we highlighted the role that women are playing in the economic recovery. And I just want to say it would not have been as successful without you. So thank you so much for doing that. So I am here wearing one particular hat, but just so you know, this is a big passion of mine. So in my responsibilities as Treasurer of the United States, I oversee the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, where the currency is produced, and the U.S. Mint, where coins are produced. So I just want to say that no one makes more money than I do.
That's great.
The other hat that I'm wearing today is I'm a senior advisor to Secretary Geithner on the issues of community development, so Main Street issues. So access to people, access to capital, access to information, and in my opinion, financial literacy, financial education falls under that hat. This is something that the Department of Treasury takes very, very seriously, and we have a very strong commitment to promoting financial education among all Americans. We believe, as all of you do, that financial education is critical in ensuring that Americans make sound financial decisions and in helping individuals, families, and communities gain greater financial stability now more than ever. There are some key roles that government can play in this work, but as we've learned, we must focus our efforts on those tasks where we can be most effective and combine with the efforts of the private sector, state and local governments, academia, and individuals to truly move towards a culture of greater financial capability. Critical in this effort is making financial education timely, relevant, and pragmatically connected to safe, appropriate products that enable people to execute on their financial choices. Last November, the Financial Literacy and Education Commission, which was created by Congress and consists of 22 federal agencies, released its national strategy for financial literacy at the first meeting of the President's Advisory Council on Financial Capability. I had the pleasure of chairing the last Select Committee, and this strategy is something that we're all very, very proud of. This national strategy is intended to provide a foundation for a national approach to enhancing financial education that provides concrete goals for the government, nonprofit, and private sectors to strive towards in order to increase Americans' financial literacy and improve their financial decision-making. The members of the Commission are currently working on an implementation plan in accordance with the strategy. We hope that you will find the national strategy useful, and it is available on our website at treasury.gov. And hopefully you will adopt all or part of its work in your own work. As you develop your own implementation approaches, whether as a business, a nonprofit, a local government, or a regional collaborative, we hope that you will share that with us as well. We realize that it takes all of us to effectively bring about a change to a more financially literate and capable country. Thank you.
Thanks, Rosie. And as part of the strategy that the Treasurer just mentioned, John W. Rogers, Jr. is chairman of President Obama's Advisory Council on Financial Capability. John, you have done so much in the field of financial literacy. You are also the chairman, CEO, and chief investment officer at Ariel Investments. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much. This has really been an exciting opportunity for me to be able to help our country around this very, very critical issue. And similar to you, my family got me started in investing early. My father started to make sure that every birthday and every Christmas after I was 12, I got stocks instead of toys. And of course, that wasn't fun in the beginning. But he made the very good decision of allowing me to get the dividend checks. And they weren't a lot of money. My father wasn't wealthy. He'd been a Tuskegee Airman in World War II. But I started to look forward to those quarterly checks every 3 months. And he let me spend them any way that I could, and it was all up to me. And so it was a great way to get started. And then I had to learn about a checking account. I had to learn about a savings account. I had to learn everything because he gave me that exposure at an early age. So that's been the inspiration for me to, 14 years ago, along with Arnie Duncan when he worked at Ariel, we created a small public school called the Ariel Community Academy. And it's a K-8 school. We have approximately 500 students. Treasurer Rios has been to visit the school. Treasurer Neely has given the graduation remarks one year for the 8th graders. And it's just been an extraordinary experience. We've also had several of the kids have had a chance to be Money Smart Kids of the Year. And, you know, that exposure has been wonderful for our school. But what we've tried to do at the school is to sort of emulate the experience that I had with my family. Every first grade class gets a $20,000 class gift that John Nuveen and Ariel provide. And then as the years go on, the first 6 years, we invest the money and do the research on the stocks. But then starting in 7th grade, 6th grade, the kids start to pick real stocks with real money. And so they have a chance to work together on deciding what stocks they want to invest in. They come downtown and work with our analysts and give us their recommendations, and we give them tips and ideas on how to make those choices. And then every year we take the kids to the McDonald's annual meeting, where I've been a director the last 7 or 8 years, and they have a chance to see what a real annual meeting is all about and engage with some of the top officers in that way. And we really do think by having the kids having the chance to have that exposure, they get very, very comfortable with the markets, you know, all the lingo, all the language from Wall Street. And then finally, when the kids graduate in 8th grade, they give $20,000 back to the first grade class, so it becomes a self-perpetuating program. And then they take a portion of the dollars and decide on a philanthropic gift for the school, and that's worked out very, very well. And then finally, with what's left over, the kids divide it up among themselves, and they put the money into a 529 program. Ariel and Pat Schwab has been very helpful. We've given each kid $1,000 to match. And so that way they start to learn about matching and get comfortable in thinking about their 401k plans for the future. So it's been an extraordinarily successful program. We're hoping it'll be a model for the way the financial services companies can partner with inner city public schools. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So many insightful and important ideas, again, to set the tone for a child so that that child has the proper responsibility and ownership of his or her money as they get older in life. So let me kick off the discussion here with asking Treasurer Rios and President Evans here about what it takes in terms of the government's role versus the private role. Can you talk to us about practical steps that government should have and private companies should have so that we have some kind of a blueprint for folks out there today? Rosie?
Thank you. Yes, so one thing, as I mentioned, that we're very proud of is this national strategy. And what was important about this strategy was it really provided the framework to reflect what was happening in this current economic recovery. And so the strategy really provided a focus in 4 different areas, which was increasing awareness of and access to effective financial education, determine and integrate core financial competencies, and I'll get into those in a minute, and improve financial education infrastructure, and identify, enhance, and share effective practices. Again, this has to be relevant to what we're seeing today. And those core competencies, you know, I had a chance to actually teach a personal finance course in a local high school last week, and I just found it very enlightening. The core competencies, I just realized, are really basic areas that we all need to really know fundamentally. And so it's earning, it's spending, it's saving and investing, it's borrowing, and it's also protecting against risk. And so for us as a government entity, to be able to provide that kind of the infrastructure, the foundation of what we believe is important with these 22, along with these 22 federal agencies, that really provides kind of the first step in moving forward for us.
Right, I agree with that. I think there are a lot of important issues here, and you know, the need for financial literacy is really great. Obviously, we all have our own examples of what people understand well and what they struggle with, and there are a lot of programs that are available. And you know, one of the classic public versus private type of questions is how do we most effectively and efficiently deliver the best type of education? So I think that experimentation is actually pretty important. As I heard Byron talk about the different games and the different events that are being planned, I think that learning which of those programs work very well and excite people, children especially, to become interested and learn about that is very important. Money Smart Week sort of grew 10 years ago out of a desire to take stock of what the private sector is already providing, because the private sector has an obvious incentive. They have financial products. They want people to use them. They add value. They want people to use their products and not their competitors' products. So there's an obvious incentive there. The public sector obviously has an incentive to educate people on financial literacy, but where's the mix? How can we benefit from everything that we do and improve upon that? So I think experimentation and pilots are really important.
Ian, that sort of dovetails with something you said a moment ago, and that is make sure to have the right products and education available at so-called, you said, teachable moments. So let's talk about some of those teachable moments. Are you referring to things like a wedding, having a baby, big moments in a person's life, and that's when you should use those opportunistic moments to actually go into lessons?
So I think there could be the big moments, like the birth of a child is one moment, or change in life event, or a wedding, moments that require insurance. So there's certainly the big moments. I think that is one sort of teachable moment. There are also the transactional moments. You know, it makes a big difference if, we've seen some of the experiments, some of the various banks offer in terms of saving with each transaction. So use the moment when you're spending to remind people about saving. So I think it's both the combination of the big and the small. And I think to go back to the previous question a bit, one of the things the research is showing is that the financial regulators have a very big role to play in financial literacy education, because they often have the best sense of where the gaps in financial literacy are. However, we also see that this is a field where we can need a lot of creativity and innovation, and that's a place where the private sector often, it leads a little bit faster. So I think this is an important field for both the public and the private to work together.
And John, something that you said which was really resonating was taking the students to, for example, a McDonald's annual meeting. Make them feel comfortable with companies or things that they already know a little about. McDonald's, Apple Computer, things that you could make even more understandable.
Well, we think it's so important to get the kids exposed to all types of businesses. Not only, it's great to go to McDonald's, and we love that, and McDonald's does an extraordinary job of hosting the kids, but we think we also want our kids exposed to the financial services industry. I read recently that 30% of the Princeton grads are all going into financial services. That's where the wealth is being created these days with hedge funds and private equity and venture capital, investment banking, all those highly lucrative fields. And so what we've tried to do is to have terrific speakers come down to the school and talk about their careers, so the kids can sort of understand that this is possible for them, that if they work really hard, get into the right high school, get into the right college, they'll have that opportunity to really be a part of our economic system and fully participate.
Which is why you said role models are very important. Everybody on this panel is a role model for students. Students have to believe, hey, I can do that too.
Exactly. We talked that, you've been a role model for millions of women when they see you on television, and we really do think we need more role models. There are so many institutions. We ask always our auditors and other financial services companies tell us about your diversity. And recently our auditor told us there were 127 partners in Chicago, 1 African American and 2 Hispanics. That same audit firm, I asked the question a few years back, had 1,600 partners nationwide, 10 African American, 1 African American female. So if you're an African American female, what do you see the odds of having a chance to be a partner in one of these lucrative types of institutions? The odds of you becoming a successful professional women's basketball player are much higher than being a partner in one of these major financial services companies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, got to make these achievements and goals reachable and understandable. Let me ask you, Ian, to go through what the rest of the world is doing. You mentioned earlier, and you told me on the phone when we were preparing for this panel, that the emerging markets are also approaching financial literacy in smart ways. What can we learn from the rest of the world?
So I think it's important to note that there's a lot we don't know. So there's a need to do a lot of research in this field. And I think, as we hear about these experiments, it's important to start documenting them and rigorously testing them to see what seems to work and where. And also being a little bit careful not to assume that lessons learned in one place will be the same everywhere else. So there may be different issues, in Kenwood than there are in Kenya. So we need to be sensitive to that. But there are a couple of, I think, interesting studies or field experiments that have been done recently. The one I mentioned about rule of thumb, that was from a project in the Dominican Republic, where they actually went to small business people, usually in the micro sector, and tried both teaching them the formal accounting, standards-based accounting, and also a few rules of thumbs, and see how that changed their business behavior. And I think the research there suggests that rules of thumb are much more effective. Another example, we looked at some of there's some field experiments in India and Indonesia, where we often think of that financial education is an important way to promote financial access. And the research revealed that, yes, it is, but it's not the most cost-effective way to promote financial access. In fact, giving people a small subsidy was 2.5 times more effective at getting them to actually start using financial products and to save. Because to the point made earlier about the relation between education and behavior. And we need to actually, I think, we're not here just to educate for the sake of educating. We're trying to influence behavior. So we need to learn that. There was examples, I mentioned some surveys in Russia. And these revealed that people were interested in financial education because they're worried about consumer protection. And they thought they were demanding education as a way to protect themselves from fraud. So trying to find people where they are and give them the sort of education they need to actually change their behavior and protect themselves.
That's a great information there. And one thing that you mentioned, John, was that when you look at African Americans, you really see a disconnect. You told me you have data that says African Americans have half the amount of money saved for retirement than white Americans.
Yeah, it really is tragic. We've been doing a survey for over 10 years. We did a survey with Charles Schwab that looked at this data, and then a year or so ago we did a survey with Hewitt and Associates and the Rockefeller Foundation and La Raza and the National Urban League, and we got real data from millions of employees, thousands of employers, and came back with this data that African Americans typically had half as much saved for retirement, same income level, same education level, and the Hispanic community was exactly in the same place. And we thought it was really important to try to expose this because of all the boards I've been on, from nonprofits to corporate boards, or companies I've invested in, anytime I ask the CFO, have you thought about the participation of your minority employees, the CFO, every single time has said, we've never thought about it. And the way that we have to think about making sure that we communicate to minority employees in different ways, more creative ways, because there are huge cultural differences in barriers to investing. And so it's something that we just think has to be exposed. There has to be many more efforts, not only in public education, but again by employers to think about having different materials, different outreach to their minority employees to get them involved in the 401k plan. Because as we all know, pension plans have disappeared, and we need to be able to make all the right financial decisions in your 401k plan if you want to be able to retire comfortably.
So let me get the take of the panel on one basic question here. Where are the gaps? What do we need to know? And I'm talking all groups, all nationalities in America today. And then we'll talk about the rest of the world. But let's talk about our children in America today. And you can choose your age. I don't know, 8 years old, 5 years old, 10 years old, 16 years old, whatever it is. Charlie, kick us off here. What do we need to know?
Well, I think one of the big issues that that we're all facing is the quality of education and what learning people bring to the financial decision. So I sort of start from the proposition that math is kind of scary. I mean, the math that I learned in elementary school, you become comfortable with. High school, you become comfortable with. College, it gets scary. It becomes increasingly scary. It's not the kind of thing, but even simple division is usually something that, you stop. You'd like to have a calculator. When you talk about financial products and where you are in the decision-making process, the product itself is pretty complicated. And then when you have to combine the fact that I need to understand the math implications, what an annual percentage rate is, what compound interest is, I think that that's something that people don't understand as well as they should. Research studies indicate that give them simple, easy examples, and they don't understand compound interest and things like that. On the retirement issue that John's talking about, that's something that we worry about, at the Fed in terms of take-up rates on our 401k and how much people are, are doing there. At different income levels, I can imagine that the overall wage compensation is just, it may not be as much as people would like in order to save for retirement. When do you start saving for retirement? So the employer match is very important in that, and it does seem very important that that firms take an active interest in that for all their employees and everyone at different income levels where it's even more.
So we need to know. We need to know that. Pardon me. Not participating in that 401k plan is leaving money on the table.
That's right. That's right.
It's free money, the match.
That's right. Now, I mean, it's not exactly. I mean, right? You have to delay consumption. You have to put off some other type of expenditure. And for some people, and especially during the financial downturn, people sort of withheld from that. And so, over a very short period of time, maybe that was the right decision, but you need to get back. And getting back into it is really a hard thing. People are very sticky in what they do. So if you get somebody into these programs, they're far more likely to stay. If you get them to think about increasing their contributions, they're far more likely to do it.
I'm glad you mentioned education, because I think it was Tom Friedman who said, you rarely see a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old saying, I want to be an engineer. You just don't hear that. So you don't hear the focus on math as a basic educational tool, which of course leads to responsibility about your money later on in life. Rosie?
Yeah, I want to talk about it a little bit more, because I really do think there's a very vulnerable population in certainly by age group, middle school, high school, but also by gender. And I want to emphasize that. I always say this every single time, especially for young girls who don't hear it enough, how important it is to be good at math, how important it is if they want to pursue a career in science. And even if you don't want to pursue a career in financial services, to have that foundation under your belt, whether you want to be in the public sector, whether you want to run a nonprofit, whether you want to run your own business, whether you just want to be literate in your own personal finances, that foundation is so very, very important. And as parents, as educators, as government officials, we need to send that message a little bit more to our own home, that it is absolutely something we shouldn't just support, we should encourage. And again, that vulnerable age where people are just starting to make their own independent choices, and especially when you go off to college and you're bombarded by those credit card applications and you don't know what to do. I just think we need to make a very concerted effort in this, especially in this age of instant gratification, instant celebrity. It's time to just stop and kind of retool and really rethink how we approach our youth.
Okay,
But I think, if I may, I think this age of instant gratification creates a ton of teachable moments. So I agree. You don't hear, or if you're Tom Friedman, you don't hear a lot of kids say, "Hey, I want to be an engineer," but you do hear them say, "Hey, I want a DS." You know, I think of my own kids. And so how do I use that to kind of teach some lessons? And I think there's a rule of thumb that I try to use with them is, money is time and time is money. So money is time because, okay, so if I'm going to pay $100-some-odd for this, how much time does Daddy have to work, and how many more time is Daddy not going to be home with you? So because money is time. If I'm going to buy something, especially on credit, I'm committing myself to work in the future. That's what credit is. It's basically I'm agreeing to enslave myself voluntarily to work for this product I want. Effectively, that's what it is. And time is money. Time is money, because, and that's where you can start talking about kind of compound interest. If I don't spend it now and actually save it, I'll have actually more money down in the future. So I think finding those teachable moments, given the barrage of things they want to buy, every other commercial they want to buy something else, well, let's convert that into time.
Well, you make a great point, and I think that it in some cases brings me back to the parents, because oftentimes what we're talking about here does begin at home, and oftentimes you don't have the parent with the kind of tools or information or education about money. So how do we also, while setting the tone for kids, get to parents, John?
Well, one of the things we've been trying to do at Ariel is at the Ariel Community Academy have a newsletter that would be sent home periodically with all the different financial concepts for teachable moments where the parents could talk to the kids about what was in the newsletter. And then a couple of times a year, we'll have a speaker come in and talk to parents in the evening. So Melody Hobson, our president, who is on Good Morning America, she's really good at talking about financial concepts. She'll go and engage the parents around these important issues, because we do think it's exactly right. You're exactly right. It's so critical for the parents to be involved, and also the teachers, because a lot of times the teachers haven't had as much exposure to financial literacy as they need to. And if they're going to be able to talk to the kids about this, we need to find ways to engage not only the parents but also the teachers.
But what should be taught then in schools? Because at some point you have to hope that you're getting some lessons at home, but also hope that you're going to have a reinforcement in school. So what does the panel think about grade school, high school, and money issues? Is it always a course that needs to be in the curriculum? Is it something else? How do we get to our kids at school? Anybody?
Well, so I think 2 points. One is grade school can also teach parents. The parents, you probably learn a lot from your kids these days about what they're learning.
Good point. Great.
So you can use education in schools also to help educate parents, and that is reinforcing. But I also think that we do need to be creative, and I think it's not just going to be kind of financial literacy course or class you take. I think we need to find new ways, and the World Bank is actually piloting different entertainment education. I'm actually excited about the soccer.
Financial soccer?
Financial soccer as a way. How do we find new ways of getting to kids that might be more effective? Let's use that DS and find a way to actually teach financial literacy through the DS, for example.
Well, that's a great point. Byron, I mean, have you seen the kind of reception that you want to see? I'm just going to go off script here for a second, because the elephant in the room is you have those entertainment entertainment vehicles out there. But, for a kid, it can't be like, oh, go eat your broccoli, right? I mean, like, you got to get the kids who want to do it and want to play financial soccer. Have you seen them want to do it?
Entertainment works.
Okay.
Which is why we're also exploring with Marvel and Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Give the kids some characters and stories to engage with, and it can be a very effective learning tool.
Entertainment works is what Byron said.
Benjamin Budget.
Yeah, exactly. Congratulations to all those students. How smart and fabulous were they? Big round of applause. Smart Money Week winners and last year's as well. Charlie, did you want to add to that in terms of the gaps, what we need to know, how we reach parents?
Well, I just wanted to pick up on what Ian said, which is, I think somehow making it fun is really important, engaging children, students, adults, and, this isn't just young people who have these problems, right? It's people who are, contemplating retirement. As you get older, things become, I wish we remembered everything, as well as we should. Actually, memory is better, but your ability to sort of do these tough financial calculations at about 50 and 53, the evidence is that's when you're best at that. And as you get older, you're not quite as good at making those decisions, but you have the benefit of experience, and so that sort of overcomes some of that. But somehow engaging people to think about that. So the teachable moments are so important. It's just a question as to what are those teachable moments, and it's that interplay that's really important.
And of course, when you're talking about money, oftentimes we get emotional. And John, this is something that you brought up to me when we were talking on the phone. You don't want to get emotional. You don't want to make important decisions when you have a problem, when you are excited or upset about something else.
Well, that's one of the things, the tricky parts about this education is our theme at Ariel, we have a turtle as a logo to remind everyone that patience wins. It's slow and steady does win the race. And I love to be able to get young people to start to think about investing for the long term. And that's why we started our program with the kids getting the money in first grade, and they can watch it hopefully compound for 8 years until 8th grade and get the sense of what the magic of compound interest is all about. Of course, the crash of 2008 kind of ruined that for a couple of classes. But we think we're back to normal again and things are going in the right direction. But I think it's so critical to get people to think long term and not let the headlines of the moment deter you from sticking with your investment program. Because people do get frightened out exactly at the wrong time if people aren't trained and taught about the importance of sticking with it for the long run.
And we've seen that all the time, every day. Knee-jerk reactions. I want my answer and my stuff yesterday. So you make decisions about short-term rather than thinking, okay, where am I going to be in 20 years, and will I need this money next week? Or will I be better off keeping it where it is with compounded interest and getting it in 20 years?
Yeah, and I would just add that there are certain superstars who are great at communicating that, and I know they're interested in these issues. Joe Mansueto at Morningstar cares a lot about the long term, and of course Warren Buffett, the greatest investor of all time, constantly reminds us of thinking long term, and that we have the greatest capitalist society in the world's history, and that we overcome our crises of the moment, and that the best days for America are still ahead of us. So I think we need those kind of messages reinforced time and time again from thoughtful leaders who know how to communicate effectively.
So how can we take action right now with people who are in the audience listening to all of you today about financial literacy, about educating our kids about important money issues, and making sure that they also have the right lessons and have the right solutions in their head and are working toward the long term? What should we all walk away from this conference with today, Ian, in terms of here's how I can participate in making a difference to this very important topic?
So I'd make two comments on that. The first, and this is true I think for both policymakers but also just private people, what's your realm of influence? So, I think a lot of people who make policy don't always necessarily even figure out how to translate that to their own home and their own families and their own, or their siblings who call them up with financial crises and things like that. So how do you look within your immediate circle, and who can you, immediately work with and interact with? The second thing is, if I were to pick the single most important feature, I think both globally and also domestically, it's how do we improve savings? How do we create opportunities to save? How do we create the resource to save? I think savings is at the core of this. And so why one of the core pillars here is having some asset that you can control.
And one thing that you mentioned earlier in terms of your list of important things to think about was consumer protection. Now, Rosie brought up a very important point, is when kids get to high school, they're bombarded by credit card applications, and they need all sorts of stuff for their dorm rooms and for everything else, and so they put everything on their credit card. So where does the issue of consumer protection come in, Ian?
I think Charlie should probably answer that.
Well, since you brought it up, why don't you start, and then Charlie will add to that.
No, so I think that this is an important policy issue globally. And you make sure I think one of the things in financial literacy is making sure you have a regulatory structure and the financial infrastructure so that kind of, there is adequate transparency and information about, what am I agreeing to when I either sign my name or accept this obligation. So I think, it's how do we make sure that, the information is clear to the consumer, that the consumer knows how to complain, and that there's a mechanism in place to actually take that complaint seriously and act upon it. And this is going to be something that is largely going to be a government or public sector function, hopefully done in conjunction with the private sector, so that the balance is struck, right? But this is a place where we do need kind of public leaders and the Federal Reserve banks and the U.S. Treasury to play a leading role.
There are some areas of financial literacy that government can put guardrails and sort of an infrastructure in place, as you called it, and then there are other areas where there will be regulation. There is the Consumer Protection Agency. Charlie.
Well, we're not the consumer, the new one, but I think the most important.
But that's where we're going.
That's right. Well, I think the most important thing is that consumers and users of these financial products understand the terms, understand the complexity of the products. The products themselves can offer tremendous value for certain types of individuals, certain types of purchases, certain types of behavior, but not every behavior, not everybody at every point where they are in their investment life and savings life. I certainly agree with Ian. Throughout the history of this event, I think it's always come back to savings is important, understanding, that putting together a budget, how simple a budget is, how complicated it is to carry it out. But then when you're presented with an opportunity, and it is an opportunity to have a credit card, to get a loan of a sort at a certain interest payment, that you understand the terms, that you understand, what it means and how much consumption you have to defer, although you're trying to have higher consumption today. So making sure everybody understands the terms as best we can, making sure financial institutions are very careful in how they prepare that, do it in a uniform fashion so that you can compare across different products to pick out the ones that are best and most appropriate for yourself. I mean, those are sort of the key messages for me.
I guess the one good news story out of the financial crisis, Charlie, is the fact that the savings rate is up now. Well, Americans are saving more money, no?
Well, yes, but that's pretty complicated. Unfortunately, a lot of the increased savings comes from writing down consumer debt on credit cards, and so, I mean, it's happened, but it's not through higher savings. Some of it is, in fact, higher savings, and that's a good thing. Actually, when I think about current monetary policy, we're not exactly helping provide an exciting incentive to everyone on their savings, because interest rates are very low at the moment. I'll bet you John found it more somewhat easier to, see his the kids at his school get excited about a 4%, 5%, or 6% interest rate than 7 basis points or whatever they might be offered today. So that's challenging, but that's where we are in the policy process, and I hate to say it, that's part of the learning process, I guess.
And one of the things while you're talking about policy and regulation, one of the other benefits, I think, of this financial literacy commitment is that it'll help our democracy. I think it's so important for our citizens to be financially literate so they can engage with their congressmen, their local political leaders, and really talk and discuss these important issues, and it helps then to have a better informed society and think better decisions then by our political leaders.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think the one piece that I think we're all learning from this process is, we always hear about access to capital, but in my opinion, investing in savings, et cetera, but it's the human capital piece of this that is the most important. And when you think about investing in oneself and what that means, it's trying to find that connection, whether it's through your teachers, whether it's through your financial institutions. How do you humanize this so that it's absorbed? It's not just something you teach and you hover over. It's something that's ingrained, something that is part of your DNA, and something that you take with you from the time you're a youth all the way to your adult decisions. So how do we make it more entertaining? How do you make it so that we can absorb it all? And so that I think that's all our role is to connect all those pieces together.
Which is a great insight, dovetailing what Ian said as far as teachable moments. Make it mean something to us.
Could I jump in here?
Yeah, please.
Because John and Rosie, touched on the fact that, it's important for everyone as citizens to understand everything that's going on, and we become, better supporters of our democratic process when we hold everybody accountable and we understand what our congresspeople and president are trying to do. But, it's also the case that when you go to work and you earn a paycheck, that It's important. Part of financial literacy is sort of understanding what the paycheck is delivering to you. Is it a wage for, the hours that you work? Does it include benefits as well? Because that's part of your total compensation. Does it include any contribution for a retirement? Because if it doesn't, then your total compensation, if you thought that it was supposed to help you towards retirement, then you're going to have to do that on your own. Are there other jobs where they actually offer you something there, but maybe less benefits? Understanding the different options and how to think about what your compensation is so critical, because, it's difficult to think about the entire retirement process without understanding that.
And it's difficult to know when you're in the job. I mean, you're in the job and you don't necessarily have the time or wiggle room to call HR and sit there and understand the benefits and understand exactly what your paycheck encompasses. So that's a great point.
And I think if I could just jump off, I think that is a critically important point, because there are limits to what education will accomplish. In all of our lives, we're all busy. We have lots of things. So how do we automate some of these decisions? How do we move beyond financial education, financial literacy at an individual level, but look at what we've learned on literacy and education at the macro level? Are there certain things we've learned from the behavioral sciences about how we kind of automate and make certain things default decisions? So you don't actually have to think about how much I want to save. It happens automatically. That lets you start to build the assets, which then give you the opportunity to make those decisions.
We have about 7 minutes left, so as we wrap up here, I want to ask the panel to think about one very basic lesson that we all need to know, so that we can actually give folks in the audience something that they could get their arms around, that this is what I need to be teaching my kids, this is what I need to be talking about at the schools, in the communities. I think for me, this morning we had a show and a viewer called in and said, do I need a Roth IRA? And I said, well, yeah, I don't have enough information to know that. Do you have a 401k plan already? Do you have a retirement vehicle in place already? My number one rule would be you absolutely have to save. Most people make this mistake time and time again. We don't save any money. And what we really need to do is every time you get paid, whether it's every week, every 2 weeks, whatever it is, that check, a portion of that you must write to yourself. And every week or 2 weeks it's going to be a different amount, because sometimes we have bigger bills than others. Sometimes we have more expenses than other weeks. So maybe it'll be $25 one week. Maybe it'll be $100 the next week. Whatever it is, people need at a very young age to start creating a nest egg and get in the mentality of having a nest egg. As we get older, I'm talking teens, 20s, then yes, a retirement vehicle needs to be started. And whether it's 401k or IRA, that's up to you, but you need savings. I call it 3 buckets. One savings for a savings account, one savings for retirement, another savings account just for retirement, and then you can have the bucket of, here's what I'm going to spend on myself. I want to buy a home someday. I want to send my child to college. Think of it as 3 buckets. That's my number one rule. If you guys can give one practical piece of advice for all of us in the audience and people who are watching, I think that would be very valuable for folks. John?
Well, I think that the number one thing that I would be emphasizing is for all of us to go back to our local communities and encourage the local public schools to have really rich financial programs and classes and curriculum. We just think that's absolutely critical. And I just think about it, if you think about it, I went to my high school, I had 4 years of French. I think at Princeton I had 3 semesters of French. And I think I've been to France about 3 times in the last 30 years.
That's a great analogy.
And I didn't have one course that taught me anything about the stock market or investing or compound interest or anything.
So you speak great French.
Right. Well, no, can't say that either.
I had the identical French experience.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I think, so touching on some of the points I've already made about investing in oneself, and certainly young girls, especially when it comes to math, and you probably already heard about President Obama's plan to win the future by preparing 100,000 world-class math and science teachers, which is very, very important, and goes into that investing mode. But I think something that I certainly believe in, something I teach my own kids, and something that I think we should all strive to do, is how to think about budgeting. no matter what your budget world is, if it's 50 cents a week, if it's $100 a month, whatever that is, really to go through that exercise with your own children about what it means to do revenues and expenses. What does that look like? And for me, you know, I never buy gadgets for my kids. They buy their own gadgets. I just refuse to do it. And so whether they save their birthday money or whatever it is, they need to reach those milestones. And so to be able to, again, personalize within your own life how to manage your own money never can start too soon.
Charlie?
I certainly agree with the budgeting is critical, and we have to save continuously. I'll just add on that, you know, I think learning never stops. I think, you know, financial products are going to innovate continuously. We're going to be offered new opportunities all the time. I think we always have to be thinking about where we can learn about, you know, what's best for us in the moment. And I think that means that with partners like everyone here in the room, we need a strong partnership. We need a lot of experimentation. I think that, you know, 1,000 flowers blooming is very important. We'll find the ones that, you know, are best and, you know, work with that. But it's a continuous evolution, and we need to stay on top of it.
Ian?
Yeah, I think I'm going to steal the line you used earlier, if I may, and that was pay yourself first, I think you said. And I think that has both, you know, financial implications, but also human capital implications, and how are we investing in ourselves and our own ability for the future.
Savings, education first, financial literacy, budgeting, experiment, have partners, make sure it's continuous throughout life, pay yourself first. We learned a lot today. Thanks, everybody.
More from the Chicago Federal